In 1940, the world learned a terrible new truth. The age of the infantryman was over. The age of the tank had begun. As the German blitzkrieg shattered France in just 6 weeks, the United States, watching from across the Atlantic, was forced into a horrifying realization. It was catastrophically unprepared for this new kind of war. Its best tank, the M2 Medium, was a joke, a flimsy, machine-gun bristling relic that was already a museum piece. America needed a medium tank, and it needed it yesterday. The result of this desperate scramble was this: the medium tank M3. It was one of the strangest, ugliest, and most compromised tank designs in history. Its own crews joked that it looked like a cathedral driving down the road. And yet, this ugly duckling, this stopgap savior, would arrive in the hands of the British Army at the darkest moment of the war in North Africa, and it would be the one weapon that could finally stand up to the panzers. This is the story of the M3 Lee and Grant, the awkward, ungainly, and utterly essential tank that held the line and gave the Allies the fighting chance they so desperately needed. To understand the M3's bizarre design, you have to understand the sheer panic of 1940. The U.S. Army, observing the war in Europe, knew its tank designs were a disaster. The M2 medium tank, their best effort, had thin vertical armor, and its main gun was a tiny 37mm cannon. It was hopelessly outclassed by the German Panzer III and IV. The Army knew it needed a tank armed with a 75mm cannon, a gun that could fire a potent high-explosive shell for infantry support and still have enough power to take on enemy tanks. The problem was, American industry had never produced a tank turret capable of mounting a gun that large. Designing, testing, and tooling up for a brand new turret would take years, time the Allies simply didn't have. So, the Ordnance Department made a radical and desperate compromise. They would take the chassis of their new medium tank design, mount the powerful 75mm cannon in a limited traverse sponson on the right side of the hull, and simply place their existing, smaller 37mm gun turret on top. This two-gun, multi-turret concept was already considered obsolete by most designers, but it was a deeply flawed, yet brilliant stopgap. It meant America could get a 75mm gun-armed tank into mass production immediately, using existing components. The result, adopted in mid-1941, was the medium tank M3. The M3 quickly developed two distinct personalities, a result of the desperate needs of the Lend-Lease program. The American version, with its tall, cylindrical commander's cupola on top of the 37mm turret housing a machine gun, was named the M3 Lee, after the Confederate General Robert E. Lee. It required a crew of 7 men to operate its multitude of weapons, but it was the British who needed the tank most desperately. They were being hammered by Rommel's Afrika Korps in the North African desert and had lost a huge amount of equipment at Dunkirk. They placed massive orders for the M3, but as a more experienced tank-fighting army, they requested a crucial modification. They designed a new, larger, cast turret for the 37mm gun. This new turret eliminated the American cupola, creating a lower profile, and it housed the tank's radio, allowing the tank commander, positioned in the turret, to direct both the vehicle and the battle without having to shout commands down to the radio operator in the hull. This British version, with its 6-man crew, was named the M3 Grant, after the Union General Ulysses S. Grant. It was these M3 Grants that would arrive in the desert in 1942, just in time to face Rommel's greatest offensive. In May 1942, at the Battle of Gazala, the British 8th Army was on the verge of collapse. Their own Crusader and Matilda tanks, armed with small 2-pounder cannons that fired only solid shot, were hopelessly outgunned by the German Panzer IIIs and IVs, which could fire both armor-piercing and high-explosive rounds. But the British had a secret weapon: the newly arrived M3 Grants. When Rommel's panzers encountered the new American-made tanks for the first time, it was a profound and nasty shock. The German tankers had never faced an Allied tank with a 75mm gun before. The M3's main gun could fire a potent high-explosive shell, which was devastating against the Germans' towed anti-tank gun positions. But more importantly, its armor-piercing round could kill a Panzer III or an early Panzer IV from over 1,000 yards away. For the first time in the Desert War, the British had a tank that could meet the Germans on equal or even superior terms. While its combat debut was not enough to win the battle, the M3 Grant's arrival was a crucial factor in stopping Rommel's complete breakthrough and stabilizing the British lines before the pivotal Battle of El Alamein. The powerful American gun had finally evened the odds. But the M3 was far from a perfect weapon. It was a machine born of compromise, and its flaws were numerous and obvious. First, the profile. It was incredibly tall, over 10 feet high, making it a huge and easy target on the flat desert terrain. Second, the hull-mounted gun. The 75mm cannon's limited traverse of just 30 degrees meant the entire tank had to pivot to aim at a moving target, a slow and clumsy process that exposed its flat, poorly sloped side armor. To properly fight, the M3 had to be in a hull-down position, with its hull protected behind a ridge, using only its main gun like a piece of self-propelled artillery. And third, its riveted construction. Instead of being welded, the M3's armor plates were riveted together. When struck by a non-penetrating enemy shell, the kinetic energy could cause these rivets to shear off and become deadly, red-hot projectiles inside the tank, a terrifying phenomenon known as spalling. It was a flawed, compromised design in every sense, and the men who fought in it knew they were in a vulnerable machine. Despite its flaws, the M3's story didn't end in Africa. It became a global workhorse, a testament to America's industrial might. In the hands of the U.S. Army, the M3 Lee was one of the main tanks used during the invasion of North Africa in Operation Torch. But its most surprising theater of war was the Eastern Front. Through the Lend-Lease program, over 1,300 M3 Lees were sent to the Soviet Union. The Soviets, who were used to the simple, brilliant, and low-profile design of their T-34, were highly critical of the M3's many flaws. They nicknamed it the BM-7, or Grave for Seven Brothers. However, they praised its high-quality construction, its reliable radial engine, and, most of all, its powerful and accurate 75mm gun. It played a crucial, if unsung, role in stopping the German advance in the Caucasus and at the pivotal Battle of Kursk in 1943. It even fought in the Pacific, where its 75mm high-explosive shell was highly effective against Japanese bunkers. In the hands of the British in the Burma campaign, it was one of the few tanks available that could take on Japanese armor. It was truly a global tank. The M3 Lee and Grant was never meant to be a war winner. It was a stopgap, a desperate solution to a desperate problem. By 1943, it was already being replaced in frontline American service by the far superior M4 Sherman, a tank whose own development was accelerated by the lessons learned from the M3's flawed but available design. And yet, for one crucial year, it was the right tank at the right time. It was the tank that gave the British a fighting chance against Rommel. It was the tank that put a reliable 75mm gun in the field when the Allies had nothing else. It was the ugly duckling that held the line until the swans could arrive. It was not a great tank, but it was a good enough tank. And in the dark days of 1942, good enough was the difference between defeat and victory. What do you think is the most underrated ugly duckling weapon of World War II? Let us know in the comments below. And for more deep dives into the machines of war, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell.